keep moving ahead after this.
So please keep moving on.
Because entrepreneurship is all about taking a risk. If you land up doing the same thing.
And life is unscripted, but just do.
And it wasn't just you and me. It was you, me, the marketing head, the finance head, the e-com head, everybody.
Action. Welcome to Unscripted, Malika.
Thank you. Why are we doing this, Mohit?
Why are we doing this? Very interesting. So as we speak with other younger entrepreneurs, as we speak with other people leading businesses, I think similar sort of questions keep coming up. And I found that when those questions come up, there is no right answer. So unscripted is, at least for me, it's a way of telling the world, hey, there's no right answer, but get going, do something about it. And life is unscripted, but just do. Why are you doing this?
On a lighter note, because you asked me to do it. So I'm returning the favor. Last time you hired me to doing something. This time I'm getting hired to do this. But I think on a more serious note, the reason of doing this is that I think over the last 5 to 6 years of running the Moms Co, there have been lots of moments where we have learned a lot. We've failed, we've succeeded, we've just landed in scenarios where we didn't know how to react, how to act as well. And there have been so many learnings, and I think it'll be very interesting to share those learnings with everybody else.
You meet a lot of women entrepreneurs in particular. What's the most common question you get?
How do I get started? And do you think I can do it on my own?
Say more. What do you mean? Do you think you can do it on your own?
I think
Or
there's a
do you think they
hesitation.
can do it on their own?
There's a hesitation for women to get started. There's always a hope that someone does it along with them. So in fact, I just went to Chennai 2 days back, and one of the audience questions was, do you think you could have done it if your husband was not a co-founder with you as well?
Oh, very interesting. And what was your answer?
I actually said yes. I said yes, I could have done it if my husband was not doing this with me. But it was quite nice that we did it together, because I strongly believe that every founder must have a co-founder, because through the course of the entire journey of being an entrepreneur, it's a really hard journey. It's a very, very hard journey. It has its ups, it has its downs. I think you always need someone you can drink with at the end of the day, whether it was a bad day or a good day. You need someone with whom you can share what your inner feelings were, whether good or the bad. And someone with whom you could just be unscripted, unfiltered, and just have honest conversations with. Because you will need that person to have those conversations with. And I think the closer you are to that person, the more friendly or the person you can be with that person, it's better, because the amount of time you're going to be spending with your co-founder is really, really large. So I think emotionally, you being my husband was a great support for me, which worked out really well. But if I had to do it alone, I could have done it alone.
Yeah.
But I think that's where it stems from, right? Like the fact that she asked me that question was, I'm sure it was playing on her mind, saying that, can I do it by myself? And consistently I've heard this question from a lot of women, saying, do you think we'll be able to do it? And how will we manage work and home at the same point of time? And those are the two broadest questions that we've always got from them.
Very interesting. So my answer on should I get a co-founder is always yes. And very similar reasons. It's being a founder is a very lonely journey. I think people underestimate the ups and downs that you get, and the fact that most of those downs in particular you can't share with your team members, you can't share with your investors.
Nobody will understand those.
No one can understand it, and you don't need to put up a brave face very often. So you need someone with whom you can be real.
Yeah.
And at least in our journey, I think what was very interesting was you typically, when you go home and you try and say what's happening at work, people don't get it, right? And that makes the journey for the founder even lonelier and harder. The thing I really enjoyed was that as husband-wife, you get it immediately, right? And you know exactly what issue is. At the end of the day, you can come home and have a great day and celebrate, or have a bad day and you don't need to explain why it was a bad day, right? They just know.
So I think we get asked this question a lot, which is, how is it being a husband-wife couple running a business together? And the answer usually I give everyone is always been the same, which is saying that, in this journey, you definitely need someone you could really trust, because there is so much you're doing constantly that having to think about the intent of the person whom you're working with, or the fact that you don't get cheated by someone you're working with, is extremely important. And I think in a husband-wife relationship, the foundation of that relationship is trust. And it's just the extension of that same trust that goes even into a couple working together relationship as well, which is, for me, was very important. I never had to second guess why you would have taken a decision while you did, right? I imagine it'll be like a nightmare if you were sitting in another room figuring out a fundraise, deciding sort of conversations on how our employment contract would look, and if I felt the need to read each and every line of it. Or I realized at the end of the day, you have a different contract than mine. You have a different salary to mine. You have a different, availability of anything is much more for you than what it was for me. It would be quite heartbreaking as well, right? And I think I've actually even come across women who have faced these issues with their partners, where they have been cheated and left with absolutely nothing. So I think trust is very important in this relationship, right? I've seen co-founders where, if I have to doubt while you're sitting in the other room and doing fundraise and closing a document, and if I have to doubt what is the contract you will sign up for yourself and what is the contract you will sign up for me, is your salary going to be different than mine, or are your perks going to be different than mine, or even the authority going to be different than mine, right? And if you decide to do it as not equals, then there is a problem, right? In our case, I never had to second judge that ever. So I could continue to run the business the way I wanted and not ever worry about fundraise or what documentation is happening on that. And it wasn't just in this case, it's like a particular example, but even on other fronts, right? I never thought that you could be having a different conversation with the team and a different conversation with me, right? The transparency was always there. The honesty was always there. And the trust was, of course, there. That is the foundation of a husband-wife relationship. And that's what we got on table even when we decided to work together.
Yeah. Actually, as I think about it, I think the foundation of a successful marriage and of a successful co-founder relationship is probably very similar, right? And at the base of it, it comes to a joint set of values that you agree on.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. When you say with trust, you didn't have to trust things like contract, things like...
Basic things.
Basic things, right? Like how you would deal with the team, etc., etc.
Yeah.
It's because at its core, maybe now we will be married for 14 years, known each other more than 15. I think through that time, we've had so many instances where our values have got tested.
Yeah.
Right? And you've come to maybe over the time arrived at, hey, these are a joint set of values that are important to both of us. That's what you also take into office, right? And of course, implementation is different and the questions are different. But the core values of, is money important? How do you treat people? Is that important? Do you think of yourselves as equal?
Yeah.
Right? If that is all sorted, then I think it leads to lesser friction as you grow the business or as your roles evolve.
There can be nothing as worse than for a team where the two co-founders are not in line with each other.
Yeah.
And if they have to sort of solve for one co-founder and the second co-founder, if they're not on the same page, I think it's a recipe for disaster.
But we had a lot of those. Like there was consistently, I think it's now famous in office that we don't agree on anything.
Yeah.
Right? So say more on what you said, because you said something different. You said the team is not second guessing each other, but I don't think we agreed on lots of things.
So what we did not agree on were on all functional things. We did not agree on saying, should we be fair to the team? Those conversations never came up because those come from values. Do I want to build an organization where everybody is fighting with each other constantly to prove that I am better than the other person? Or do we create an environment where everybody wants to thrive and the other person kind of helps the first one to thrive even more and achieve more from life? And if you go back even at the mom's core, like a lot of people have memories who are in touch, like the first employee, the second employee, everybody is in touch with us. Because they all took a lot from the company when they left. And that was a very common value that we shared.
Yeah.
What we disagreed was on the marketing campaign. What we disagreed on was, let's say for instance, a policy that we wanted to implement, right? Like there were lots of times that you wanted to do a lot of leadership training, you wanted to do a lot of general growth. And we were so young in the organization that we would have a debate saying that, what they need is basics. It's just too early to get all of this started. But none of it was on the larger issues of how do we treat people. How are the women in the office treated? What is the environment that we want to create? Those were all the same. Now, fighting over a marketing campaign, I think is extremely important. Yeah, like everybody needs to have their point of view. There is no point of having another person if that person is going to be yes, ma'am, or yes, sir, right? And I think it wasn't just between the two of us, but it was also between us and the team, which constantly was an open conversation happening, saying no. And I think that was the essence of all the success that the Momsco got. That people were allowed to have a voice, and people were, in fact, allowed is the wrong word for it. People were encouraged to have a voice of their own, right? People who consistently did well and got rewarded were the ones who had a voice of their own, who had the courage to take a risk.
Yeah.
Because entrepreneurship is all about taking a risk. If you land up doing the same thing in the same fashion that a 1,000-year-old or a 100-year-old company has done, you're never going to make it there very fast. The only way to do it is that you do something which is different from what someone else has done. And that is something that we always allowed. And it was beautiful that there was a room in which we fought and we sort of yelled, we did everything. And at the end of the day, and it wasn't just you and me, it was you, me, the marketing head, the finance head, the e-com head, everybody.
Yeah.
Like everybody had a disagreement in opinion, and how at the end of the day we landed at agreeing on something. Because again, then the whole motive or the whole, sort of the underlying value behind all of it was the same for everyone that we hired as well.
Yeah.
So the basics were never questioned, and basics were never what we fought over.
Yeah. And I think that over time that became particularly important and something we spoke about, right? So as a husband-wife couple, especially doing a business together, how do you now start to role model or say the right things, right? So I think in an essence, it was important for us to disagree a little bit openly, to role model to the team saying, hey, disagreeing is okay and it's the right thing for the company. And so that's why it's okay to disagree and evolve to get to a better answer.
Yeah, but there were also moments I remember where the senior top team also came up and said that, listen, like, whom do we listen to if the two of you are having a conversation? And I hope you're not taking this home. But, it just takes me back to that moment where we had just recently hired, if you remember, our top team, like a completely fresh top team. And after about 45 days that they were in the organization, the HR one day came to me, and I remember Timsy coming in and she's asking questions, saying, the whole top team has one question to ask, so I'm going to just ask that question. And I said, sure. And I thought it would be about, can we go for a little offside?
Or lunch or dinner.
Or lunch or dinner. And the question was actually saying, don't you and Mohit talk at home? And I was like, what is this question? Like, of course we talk at home. She said, no, don't you and Mohit talk at home about what we have told individually to all of you.
Yeah.
And that was the moment when I just sat back and I said, no, we don't.
Yeah.
I said, you have to realize that we also have a life outside of the Momsco.
We didn't for a very long time.
Of course, we had like the whiteboard in our bedroom for the longest period of time, but sort of getting back to point, right? I told her we have children to take care of, we have a family, and we have everybody as well. So we do take work back to home, but we don't take conversations back home.
Yeah.
Right? We're not having discussions back home, and it's a very conscious decision that you and I both took, if you remember, saying that we don't want to be an organization where you and I go back home, take a decision, come back the next day and tell the team, please implement it.
Yeah.
And that was exactly what I told her at the same time, right? If we don't want to be that organization, we want to have that conversation with you, because that's the reason why each one of you has been hired, right? Like, you are experts in your own lines. And it's not fair for me and Mohit to go back home and take these decisions, right? So any decision that impacts your scorecard or your delivery in the organization will never be taken back at home. Anything which is more broader in picture, which is for the organization at large, we might have discussions of those at home.
Yeah.
Because the expectation, like, surprisingly was that you didn't show up for that meeting. And I was like, it's not on my calendar. And she would be like, yes, but we told Mohit that Malika needs to attend this meeting. I said, and how do you think I'm going to attend it, right? Like, it's not there. So please tell that person, if he wants to have a conversation with me, he needs to come and have the conversation with me and not with Mohit.
Yeah.
And I think that conversation and the openness with which she could come and ask the question and sort of resolve it. And then she went back and told the team, guys, they don't talk to each other. They don't talk to each other at home. So please don't assume that Mohit has told Malika something and Malika has told Mohit something. And I think after that, it just changed, because in the room, then there wasn't just a relationship between you and me, but it was between you, me, me and the marketing head,
Yeah.
me and the e-com head, me and the HR head, you and the e-com head, so we all had individual relationships with each other. It wasn't just one person in this room or two people in this room have a relationship with each other.
Yeah.
And that, I think, was very helpful for us in building the Moms Co the way we did it.
Yeah. I want to actually go back and rewind a little bit because you reminded me of an interesting story. So when we started the Moms Co, and obviously we had no money and we had a small house, we had a whiteboard in a bedroom with a to-do list.
Yes, it was the
Right.
worst decision ever.
It was the worst decision. So for
I would
anyone,
recommend people
so
not
for
having it.
anyone listening, if you are a husband-wife couple, do not put a whiteboard in your bedroom.
Yeah, it's a disaster to wake up to a list of to-dos.
Yeah.
And to wake up together and instead of saying, hi, how are you? Sort of look at the to-do
To-do
list
list saying,
and
"Tumne
think,
ye nahi
Malika, did
kiya."
you finish this? I was like, I just woke up, I don't want to have this conversation.
Yeah.
And I think, of course, when you start, you start small and you don't know how it is going to go and you're eating out of your own savings. So
Yeah.
which is why you're trying to be very, very frugal in everything that you do. But as soon as I think we raised and our first check came in, we got a separate space where the whiteboard moved to the office.
Yeah.
And interestingly, it was the same whiteboard, if you remember, that moved to the office.
Oh, correct.
It was
Correct.
broken from the sides, and
Yeah,
up till
yeah.
I think we had till the last house.
We should have
It was
kept
6
that as a
months back.
memento.
Yeah, till 6 months back. It had everything
Yeah.
from the side, which had sort of got teared up, but we still kept it, and
Yeah.
that was that whiteboard. But yes, I truly agree. Please don't keep a whiteboard in your
Yeah.
yeah.
Related to that, a question I get asked very often is, as a husband-wife couple, how do you then manage work-life balance, right? And my answer to that is, at least in Malika and my case, and different people have different answers, but I think in Malika and my case, we just stopped wondering and trying for work-life balance. I think we evolved to a space where at least I started calling it work-life merger, right? That you've come and you've understood that both of us are extremely obsessive about work. Work is important. When we need to take the time off, we take the time off, right? So even now, I think our calendars are filled with, hey, we have to go to this dinner, we have to do this, and we're blocking off time for life, but that life is on our work calendar, right? And so there is no real work-life balance, but if you're obsessive about it, I think that's what happens, and you take it home. Did you ever manage to switch off from work when you're at home?
No, I was terrible. I was terrible at it. Like, I still am. But again, as you said, right, like, I tried to have a work-life balance for a very long time. Also, I think because this is where your women and men comes into picture, right? Because you could just go back home and chill.
And switch off.
And switch off completely, watch a serial or something. Right?
Yeah.
Like, but I had to go back home and make sure the house was intact and in order. And I had to make sure that the children had done their work. And it wasn't that you kind of implied in any fashion that it was my job to do all of this, right? But I felt I should do it because, one, I was also getting back to starting after 5 years of my last job that I had, right? And so all of this was my job and my responsibility at home. So, it was very hard initially to kind of figure it out. I really tried. Until there was this one point of time when I realized that I don't think I can do it. So I have to start letting go of certain things and letting someone else take on that responsibility, right? Otherwise, there is no way I'll be able to concentrate and do something productively at work because something or the other is constantly going to happen. And even then I tried to figure out my own version of work-life balance. It was just one fine day I said, I don't want this. Like, this is not worth it. It's more of a stress than the other. And then, as you call it merger, I actually call it integration. So it's like work-life integration, where I just thought it was okay for me to take time out for work when I'm with family, and it is okay for me to sort of, take time out for family if I'm at work. So I've done some really crazy things after that where, it's really funny because I did, if you remember Saina's birthday party, we had a investor meet.
Yes.
On the day of her birthday
day.
party. And I entered the investor meet with calling the balloon wala bhaiya and saying, bhaiya, aap pahunche nahi ho abhi tak. Cake has to get delivered, so go get the cake and all of that. Sat in for 1 hour to do the meeting, and at the end of the 1 hour, I said, okay, I really need to rush right now once the meeting finished. And he was like, why? What happened? Have a drink? And I was like, no way. I have Saina's birthday, which starts in like another 45 minutes, so I have to go. So as soon as I was leaving from there, I was asking, saying, balloon wala aa gaya, send pictures of the venue, and all of that was happening. And I was like, but I did it, right? But at the same point of time, I've also cancelled meetings because the girls had something really important in school and they were performing and I had to go for that, right? And I think we reached a space where I made that normal for everybody else. I have never in my life denied a leave for anybody in the organization. So again, going back to, right, trusting everybody else, and when you trust the others, people also trust you for something else, right? So I've done both of this, and I sort of thought it's okay. Like, we've gone on holidays where I have said first 3 hours we will not go out anywhere because I need to finish work calls with everybody else.
Yeah.
And then step out, depending on the time difference, either the start of the day or the end of the day. And after that, and everyone around you, it's amazing how everyone around you aligns to this.
Yeah.
Because they know that for these 3 hours in the beginning of the day, they will not. So I remember going on family vacations where the family would figure out saying, they're not going to be there for the first 3 hours. Let's go have a nice breakfast. Let's go for a swim. Let's do everything, because they'll only be free by 12. And when you get free at 12, then you're available from 12 onwards for everybody at that point in time. And I think sometimes just voicing it and letting everybody know just normalizes the whole fact. So I actually gave up on work-life balance and thought, let's integrate the two together. I think it was the best decision ever.
Yeah.
Like, best decision. There was no load after that. Like, everything was normal. Like, it became normal for people to ask the question, say, if we have to leave early in the morning, is it possible? And we said, yes, we can leave early in the morning because it was a long travel.
Yeah.
And after we reach there, when you do lunch, I will be doing my calls.
I remember over time, the family just got used to having you and me off on calls once in a while. There's this really interesting story that came to me. So we're up in the hills. We're driving on a holiday. The kids are maybe 3 and 6 at that point of time. And there's some really important package that needs to be delivered. वो delivery हो नहीं रही है. And because we're going around the bends, we keep losing in and out of the signal. So we're both sitting with phones in our hands, staring at it. We take a corner. The bars suddenly come up and it says, stop, 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 stop. And everybody stops on the side of the road. You get out and you pick up the phone and start yelling at this guy. And we're meekly sitting saying, shit, I hope this gets sorted, because then we can resume our holiday.
No, I actually was remembering a lot. There have been a lot of such instances, actually. I remember once where there was an influencer went live and there was too much traffic and the website was not ready to take the traffic. And the code that we had given her as a discount coupon was not working on that point of time. And the escalations came to you and me, because if we were the third level of customer care at that point of time.
Yeah, we used to get customer phone calls.
So we used to get customer phone calls saying this code is not working, and then we called everybody from the team and they're like, okay, you're calling from the units. And like, yes, of course you're calling from the units. I said, okay. And we came back and there were a few of them said, आप लोगों की छुट्टी नहीं होती है ना? So I was like, like, we used to doing this. Like, it feels abnormal. Beyond a point, it felt abnormal. That
to be off,
to not see your phone or not see the email. I don't know of any holiday I've taken without my laptop.
I think on the way we made work life, or I made work life merger work, is by developing the ability over time to mentally switch off. Right? Because when you're in a startup, you're building something, the first few years, shit is breaking all the time, all around you, right? So just that ability to mentally switch off. It's very, very hard to do. So I actually physically started keeping my mobile phone in a different room. Otherwise, I would pick it up. I still have that problem. Otherwise, I would pick it up and just go back to what's happening.
But you're very disciplined in life.
I'm trying to be.
Yeah, you can like go off Instagram for like months altogether if you wanted, because you think it's taking away too much of your time. But I don't think normal people like me are like that.
Normal people like you.
Yeah, we have our sins. So we like to see what's happening in other people's life. But so they've been...
How do you mentally switch off?
I actually don't. Like, even if I do, I think I would mentally switch off by just listening to music by myself and I lock myself inside that room. And, sort of not have anybody come inside at that point of time. Or also when you're just watching some random Netflix at the end of the day. So if you remember, we just finished watching She-Hulk.
Yeah.
And the reason we wanted to watch She-Hulk and not Shantaram, which was the second option, which is the 2 live serials that we're watching right now, was only because Shantaram needed attention.
Yeah.
While She-Hulk needs no attention.
Yeah.
You could multitask while watching that, right? And that's,
sorry, Marvel.
No, but it was lovely. But of course, like, you could do multiple things while watching that, right?
Yeah.
So that's the reason why you did it, and that sort of helps you switch off. While you were talking about your how you were making the life integration happen, I actually thought about the instance of one very important point. When they talk about husband-wife couple working together, honestly, in our case, I don't think our marriage would have survived if we were not working together.
That's a very loaded statement,
Yes.
Malika.
Yes, it wouldn't. But I'll tell you the reason why.
Shit, I would have had no business and no wife. Oh God.
Yes, at the end of the day. Like, I like how you're assuming you would have had no business and no life. And not that probably I would have had no business and no husband.
You would have found another husband. Yeah, मैं क्या करता? I married up, no?
So, okay. But the reason why I say that is that, startup is so all-consuming.
Yeah.
That you're constantly thinking, and especially the first few years of when you decide to start up, right? It's all consuming. You're not available for half the time. And even if you're sitting there either at dinner or anywhere else, your mind is always somewhere else for a large part of your time. I think just working together, I just knew of what's happening on your head and what is it that you're going through. And every time you would start to behave a little odd, I knew it is because something is going on in your mind.
Otherwise, you would have assumed it's some other woman, and then what would happen then?
I would have assumed another woman. You can't manage one, managing two would have been really hard for you. But it would obviously be saying that you're going distant away from us, or you're going away from us would have been more like it. I remember moments like that when even you were in McKinsey, right? Like you were so busy, and I just couldn't understand how can someone be so busy that you have no time. How is it that your weekends are officially off? But how is it that your weekends are really never off?
Yeah, you're constantly working.
Yeah, and also not just that, right? Like, it's not the time when you're working, because when you're working, you're visibly working to everybody else. It's the time when you're not working and you're taking the time to switch off by yourself, which is very hard to understand for someone, right?
Yeah.
Because that's the time which you need to fill up and fill the gap for. Like, what is the need to switch off? Like, nobody's switching off here, right?
Yeah.
So I think that was very important. So I actually think that it worked out in our favor.
Now I'm worried, shit.
It's also a different world.
Startup
is a very different world.
Yeah, it's a very weird world, right? I remember the early days, your father's on the board for multiple reasons, right? And he would come to us and say, "Tum karte kya ho? Like, please explain this to me. So you're loss making and people are giving you more money to fund your losses. When will you turn a profit?"
Yeah.
Right? And for the longest time, we didn't figure out. So it's a...
He's like, what sort of a business model is this where profitability
तो
is
पैसा नहीं
not-
बनाते हो.
नहीं पैसा नहीं बनाते हो और तुम लोगों को पैसा नहीं मिलता है कंपनी से.
हाँ.
That was the other thing, right?
And you don't get dividends.
Like, how do you not get dividends?
Like,
How do you get
salary
salary?
देते हो. Yeah.
So it's like, no, we get paid a salary. So why? You're an employee. And I'm like, yes, we're all employees. So, no, you could take the whole money out. No, you can't take the whole money out. It's not your money.
It's not your money.
It is someone else's
Yeah.
money. So, like, I think nobody understood. So when you decided to move from McKinsey to Snapdeal and then from Snapdeal to your next to-be organization before Momsco happened, they all were like, how silly can you be? Like, you're leaving all your salaries, which are really high paying, which someone would sort of, like dream to be at. And then you decide, this is it, I don't want this. And I remember most of the people coming and saying, Mohit's going through midlife crisis.
Yeah, very early midlife crisis.
Yeah, very early midlife crisis. And I remember you saying that, which is very interesting because you told my dad really early on, when you were getting married to me, I think, or maybe 1 year after we got married, where you said, this is the money I want to make by the time I turn 40. And it was very surprising because I don't think you remembered it till he reminded you after the acquisition.
No, I've always had that number in mind.
You've always had that number in mind. So, and he was like, and when my father said, why would you do something like this? And he just turned around and said, the money I have to make, I can't make it in my salary.
Yeah.
I have to make it if I take a larger risk, because the larger risk has a larger return. So I'm going to just take the risk. And I also remember we decided saying that 2 years is all we'll give this. And in 2 years, we'll know whether it is doing well or not. And I think it was one of the wisest decisions or advices that someone actually gave us, saying that give it 2 years. And at the end of 2 years, if you think it's not going anywhere, either drop it or, sort of just drop it, actually. Just drop it, because you will get so personally involved in it because you're doing this 24/7 for like 12 months and all the years all together, that it's very hard to sort of pull yourself back from it and say that, no, it's time to shut this, right? And we decided if at the end of 2 years, we see this is not going anywhere, we'll shut it and go back to our regular businesses. It was also 2 years because we knew by then we would run out of
money,
whatever savings we had made.
Yeah.
And it would get difficult to start paying for the house. But I think everyone should have that number in mind when they're running their startup. As what is that period of time for you? Because, we've always discussed this. It is not a problem in a startup when you fail. If you do well, it's great. If you fail, that's also not a problem. The problem is if you're just moderately successful and you're not going up and you're not going down. And that's the stage where you can't do anything about it, right? and you take a call after that stipulated period of time saying that, do I now stop, or do I go on, or do I push harder, or do I just press that accelerator to go like zooming ahead?
Yeah. What is the hardest thing for you in working with your husband as co-founder?
So personal emotions did come in the way a lot of times.
Okay, say
Right.
more on that.
So it's interesting that you may be my co-founder at work, but you were also the man I was in love with.
Yeah.
Right? So sometimes giving really hard feedback, and you know how I give feedback, giving really harsh feedback and seeing you get disappointed with that feedback was heartbreaking. Like, it was heartbreaking at times. And then I'm pretty sure I kind of like sort of wrapped my words around to give you feedback also.
I don't think so. I don't think you held back any punches at any point of time. Yeah, I think actually the opposite. Basically what you thought was, this man is in love with me, so I can tell him whatever I want. So let me be as brutal as possible in the feedback I give him.
Yeah, all for your good.
All for my good.
Also make you better.
He will not question my intentions, so I'll go as hard as possible.
Yeah. But after that, I also learned to tell people that I'm giving you this feedback. So anybody outside of you,
Yeah,
I would tell
that's
them,
true.
Like I actually tell those people saying that I'm giving you this feedback. It may sound really harsh, but I'm saying this because you need to hear it the way it is.
Yeah.
And
I
I'm
care
only
for
saying
you.
it, I care for
Yeah.
you. Let's not forget this. At
Yeah.
the end of the day, we should still be friends.
Yeah.
But having said that, this is like, what you're trying to do is absolutely stupid.
For me, it was actually very different, and we've spoken about this before. So, for a long time, we were in a situation where we didn't know how this is going to go, right? Not money, etc. The early years are very hard. The early years were very hard. And for a long period of time, when you're not showing and all your savings are in this, I think for me, the toughest part was being in a space where my role as a man and being the provider of the family, knowing that I've dragged you also into it, right? Or we're doing this together, and this may turn out to be nothing. That's hard, right? Because I've had flashes and I've had moments where I'm saying, shit, how will we send our kids to school? How will we, and I can always get a job, etc. But those moments when you're low and you are a husband and wife together, I think those can be very, very hard. So those are the moments where you need the moral support, but also not having a single salary income coming into the family can get very hard. So those were particularly hard moments for me.
Yeah, I know. I have heard of a lot of those moments for you, and I think you're quite obsessed quite a bit about those actually.
I did for a
like
while.
you did for a while. No, not for a while. Like forever. I think you were really obsessed over it because you felt that. I think because what I always felt was you always had that thought saying that if you did not do this, and if you were doing a
alternatives were
regular
better.
job,
Yeah.
the alternative would have been a yes to that answer. Something even as simple as, if you remember, we were discussing moving Myra to an international board school.
Yeah.
And when we figured the school fees, we realized, shit, this into 2 is something which is not even like our 5-year salary at that point of time. So there is no way we can do this. And I think that's, again, you said that, no, but if I was working in my previous organization,
we could have done that.
like we could have done this more. So it was a choice that we made.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's that's also hard. Like people talk a lot about the challenges that women face, but this is a particular challenge that I think even men face, right? Because we've sort of grown up in a space where women are supposed to be caretakers and men are supposed to be providers. And the moment those parts of yours get questioned, that's when people start feeling it, right? Like for women, or for me, it was always people saying that, do you have mom guilt? Again, coming from caretaker. For you, it was about money and not being able to do something you would have been able to, because you always felt that you had to be the provider, and sort of not doing it was there. So it goes back
it's
to
a lot of conditioning, right? And then
it's a lot of conditioning on how you grew up. So it was just that. But I think this played for you for a very long period of time.
It did.
Yeah.
What would you do differently if you go back to, let's say we're in year 7 of the business now, right? Year 6 of the business.
6.
If you go back to the first year, 2, 3, with its context of working with your husband as co-founder, what would you do differently?
I think I would have spent a lot of time figuring out what you're really good at. I think we did spend a fair amount of time not working on our skill sets initially. We did not know them. We had never worked together professionally. We had never discussed work professionally. And I think through the course of time, we realized what our skills were. For instance, sending you for a negotiation to close numbers with our manufacturer in hindsight was not the best decision we had taken.
Yeah.
Like, you couldn't work on that relationship. There was a lot of relationship working there in the initial years.
Yeah.
Because I think particularly important in the Indian startup ecosystem kind of a space. A lot
especially
of stuff,
this was manufacturing, right? They've all grown on relationships.
Like a lot of things move initially because of relationships. You get your first manufacturer, your first supplier to work with you because of the relationship you build with them, because your size is so small, your order quantity is so small. And if you want to work with someone who's really big, there is no incentive for them to work with you. And that's when personal relationships come into picture. And I think just try to have a very corporate-ish relationship at that point of time to close a negotiation is not the wisest possible decision at that point of time. That's something you do after 2-3 years when that person has seen proof of your business or has seen scale up of your business happening. And that's when you can have all those conversations going. But initially, it's a lot of relationship, that sort of relationship building with your people, which actually makes it work. I think that's really worked for the Mom Square as well, because if you remember, when we started and we wanted to do what we wanted to do, we said that we want everybody in the ecosystem to use what we create. And I think it was not just the employees, you and me, but it was also the suppliers and everybody else. And because they became users of the product and had a relationship with the brand, is where stuff got progressively easy for us to get. Like, they did make alterations for us in order quantity, import value that they got for, negotiations on cost, everything.
Yeah.
So I think one of the most important things you need to do is build relationships. And a lot of other stints as well. If we knew our personal strengths, we would have just focused on that from the beginning.
I think probably the same. What would I have done differently? Actually, I had no context of how hard being a funded entrepreneur woman can be. Right? I had no understanding, no context, I'd never seen, right? And so I don't think we spent enough time actually discussing it or making it easier, right? That's one of the hopes with Unscripted as well, right? That for a lot of other wannabe women entrepreneurs, we help them take that plunge and go through that. I didn't understand it, right? So I remember moments where we walked into VC rooms and you walked out saying, I didn't say a thing because all the questions were directed to me. And when we were hiring, it was hard. There's so much of it was harder. We should have probably taken more steps to make it easier for you along the way. Right? I think it's just a very unfair bias that people have.
I don't think you can make it easier, and which is what every time I have a conversation with a woman, woman follower, or a women entrepreneur, I always tell them, like, it's not going to be easy when you start, but it'll become progressively easier through the journey.
Why does it get easier?
The ability for you to show up and to show results, that's what everybody strives for. If you kind of start getting the manufacturer of the business that he wants, there is no way he's ignoring you.
Yeah.
Right? The moment you start giving returns to a VC, like the way he wants, there's no way he's ignoring you. And so on and so forth, even for the employees. Like, if there are people who have seen your business grow, there is nobody else who's going to question saying, do I come and work for a women founder or not?
Yeah.
Right? So initially, it's always a question. I think there's still a lot of time for us to get to a position where this is not a question or a contention before any decision gets taken. But having said that, that's the world you live in. Like, let's move on in life and then let's make sure that within 6 months we try and turn this around.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. I don't think we did anything about it, but we did.
It just started working.
No, but if you remember, I did do something. Like, if you remember one of the investor conversations where we went, they kept asking you a conversation. It was the first meeting, so everything was about the product and the brand.
Yeah.
And they kept asking you the question.
Which are both your domains, product and brand.
Correct. And they kept asking you the question, and I kept answering. And at the end of the third or the fourth question, when he asked the question, I just did not answer.
Yeah. And I looked at you, and you didn't answer. And
I didn't answer.
Eventually, he had to look at you.
He eventually had to look at me and ask me the question. So I was like, listen, let's be clear. I manage this part. If you have any questions, please ask me directly.
Yeah.
And that was it. After that, he didn't make it a point to ask me the question. And through the course of multiple fundraisers after that, people knew exactly what questions to ask you and what questions to ask me.
Yeah, we got there eventually.
Yeah. I don't think respect can be demanded. It has to be earned.
Yeah.
And you have to command it.
Yeah, I think...
So you have to work for it, unfortunately, and probably women have to work harder for it than men have to.
Yeah.
But that shouldn't be something that stops you from doing what you really want to and what you're really passionate about. I think that's okay. I think in the last 6 years, this has been the longest time I've had a one-on-one conversation with you.
That is true.
With either nobody coming and
true.
knocking on the door in the office, or children not walking in at home.
Yeah.
So
And so that just so that everybody knows, this is designed. This is because it's a Saturday and we've blocked out the office, of course, because office is not here and kids are at home, and we've actually got mind space and time to do this.
Yeah, but it was interesting. There were lots of memories that came up again. There was lots of things I actually, which you voiced about yourself, which you never have, like money conversation. So it was a nice conversation.
Good. Thank you for a fun chat. I think we're going to do this much more often, and the idea is over time we'll pick up lots of topics around entrepreneurship. I'm superbly inspired always when I hear you having conversations with other women, and I'm a privileged bystander in those conversations.
Yes.
So hopefully we bring those up and inspire a few more people to have their unscripted lives.
Yes, and if you have any questions for us, please drop them over, and we'll be very happy to take them up in our next chat.
Thank you.
Cut.
Lovely, beautiful.
Cut.
Loved the conversation.